Well, good evening, everybody. We are back with a bonus stream this week for an evening with. I'm Triangle Face, and I'm joined with my co-host Blunners. Good evening.
Hello. Hello, everyone. You all right?
And our guest this evening, Mr. Paul Docherty. So thanks for joining us, Paul.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Well, thanks for coming on. It's nice to meet you, and hopefully we'll have a nice, fun chat this evening about games and your upcoming documentary. So, before we get into any of those big topics, what we like to ask all of our guests at the start of our shows is, what are your early gaming memories? So, when you first sort of discovered gaming, and what got you into the hobby of gaming, and what sort of your favourite systems and games were sort of growing up?
Well, I mean, I'm an old man, so I remember seeing the arcades back when we went to vacation at the beach. So, I mean, I saw the original stand-up cabinets for Space Invaders. Was probably the first one I played. I mean, next to the stand with all the little 2p coins that you're trying to push off the edge. So I'd had a taste of it, and I liked that vibe. So the first computer I got, the first game system I got was a VIC-20. Like a friend of mine had like a ZX80, or ZX81, sorry. And I was a bit embarrassed that mine had color and proper sound. I needn't have been. I mean, I got super popular really quickly. So I was seduced by the Imagine Play the Game ads. So the first game I bought was Wacky Waiters.
All right.
Not great. but you pay your £5 whatever, and like I played it to death, right? I wanted to get the maximum value out of it, and I think, I don't know if it was in the next game, but very early on after that, I got Abductor by Lamasoft. It was like a Galaga kind of thing. The aliens come swirling at the top, and you're stuck at the bottom. And I liked that it was really arcadey. Like it was like sort of like doing the thing that I liked seeing in the arcades on my home computer. That felt great. And then Gridrunner came out after that, and that was me locked into like the arcade games at home completely. That's what I wanted. So I was really into that. And it was following Jeff's games. I actually had Sheep in Space and Incipital on tape before I bought the Commodore 64, and that sort of like led me in that path. So that's where I started. I had a friend that had a VCS, but I never had one.
And it's crazy actually to think that those sorts of games are still popular now. And if you think back to the arcade, if you go into an arcade, one thing that's quite popular I see a lot at the moment is like the giant Space Invaders. So it's still Space Invaders, but it's like a big, massive screen, and you have there with the gun turrets, and there's a lot more lights going on, but it's still Space Invaders. And like the ones where the coins push off the steps, those are still popular now. Like you go in there, like my kids love those. So it's funny how those things have survived the test of time, and how we've gone from cassettes now to primarily digital, I suppose. We often talk about trying to maintain physical media and keeping things on discs and cartridges. We sort of grow up with physical game copies as well. But that's how much it's changed, yet somehow still quite the same.
Were you ever into any of the coding or getting the games, or was it back in the day? I know that I started on ZX. Well, my brother did mainly. We only had like Frogger and a few games that we borrowed, if you know what I mean. But it was a different time to be alive at that time.
Well, I mean, I did try programming for a bit. I mean, I would do the listings at the magazines and stuff.
Yeah,
it seemed sort of possible. And I was on CompuNet, which is sort of like a mini internet for the Commodore 64. And there was like a group on there that sort of like, it seemed possible. But I was terrible at troubleshooting. I couldn't hunt bugs for the life of me. I just give up. So I never had the temperament to do it. You have to really kind of stick with it. Like I would just look at this wall of code and went, I don't know, I have no idea.
Yeah, it's quite intimidating, isn't it, when you start looking at like coding stuff. And I always remember the first time I got into doing any programming. It was just one of those basic exercises. I think I was like, I don't know, task 2 or 3, and I just couldn't get it to run. And everyone else in the class had kind of moved on. I was like, why is mine not working? It's literally like 5 lines of code. This should work. And it turns out the reason mine wasn't working is because I was trying to run task 2, and the name of the file was task 2 with like a lowercase t, and I was running it with an uppercase t, and it just wouldn't work because of that. And I was like, change to a location, you ran it, runs fine. I was like, okay, this is what we're getting ourselves in for, things failing over a letter.
Well, that's the thing, like teaching computer programming in school. I don't know, had that. I would have loved that. Just a little bit. This would have really helped me out, maybe. Who knows? It's so back when I was like starting out, it was the people who really were self-starters and were really, really good at doing their own research, and I'd met a bunch of those people. I was not one of them.
But you get a lot of the stuff from those early days were the people playing around with it, just discovering new things that it could do.
Really?
And then just actually we didn't realize that it could even do this. So what if we did this and what if we did that, and just like finding different paths into making games. And that's where we kind of got.
I don't know if you guys cover it, but like the demo scene, right? You see these coders, young coders now, doing stuff on old hardware, like on unmodified hardware. That's just mind blowing. If we'd only had half a clue back then, but the games would have been just incredible.
Yeah, we see quite a lot of.
Tim, you're making a game now, aren't you? You're making a game now, aren't
and I'm making a game on Game Boy Studio. So
nice.
I wanted to start off small because there's only so much you can do on a Game Boy.
Right.
So I don't want to bite off more than I can chew. So you only got a few pixels to work with. So making a character or something, it's got to be within the limitations of a Game Boy. But and that's with an engine that allows you to it does a lot of the really heavy lifting for you. It's not as much coding, but it's more sort of visual coding and logic gates and adding properties to sprites and running scripts and stuff. So, but yes, it is quite a learning curve to pick up, but it's always rewarding when you get into sort of stuff like that. Nice. So thank you. And how has your sort of involvement in gaming continued on from then? Have you sort of always sort of been keeping up with games and getting stuff?
I had terrible time management when I was young. So like when I moved, long story short, I moved from London to the States for reasons. And then so when I moved to the States, I decided not to own a console because I knew that all my free time would just be soaked up by that. So I was sort of more or less video game free for 5-6 years, and then but then I discovered that Jeff again, one of those things where Jeff, I discovered he'd done a version of one of my favorite games, Lamatron, and it existed on the PC. So I did play PC games for a minute, and then Doom came out, and so what I thought was a game neutral platform suddenly became the gaming platform of choice. So games sort of followed me about. And but then I wasn't, so I dipped in and out. I got into first-person shooters for a while. I was really into Unreal Tournament, but didn't really get into gaming seriously until I started making this documentary about Jeff. Obviously, I played a lot of Jeff's games, but I also wanted to, well, as a filmmaker, I need to have context. Why is Jeff different? So, during the COVID lockdown, there was, there's only one over here. I just bought a bunch of titles and then just played that. Lots of different styles of games, different generations of games. Caught up on some classics, played some stuff that was new, just to sort of get a breadth of it. So now I generally play a game once a day now, and I try to keep it down to about an hour. But it was, so for me there was a huge jump, right? It was barely 16-bit when I sort of backed out, right? And now it's next generation upon next generation. It's the graphics cards are just unbelievable.
Crazy,
unbelievable what things do out of the box. So it was shocking. And so there's an awful lot less imagination required to play a game. You don't have to imagine these 5 pixels represent a horse. It's a horse now, So that was it's good and bad. It's I don't know. It's different. It's very, very different now.
And it's interesting actually, because I think a lot of people we speak to that started off on some of the older platforms like Atari or BBC Micro, things like that, do often say that you do have a level of imagination while playing it, because it is just a handful of pixels, and your brain does the rest, and it's right. That's why those games are still kind of engaging to play even now. So you mentioned playing some of Jeff Minter's games, so that kind of segues nicely into your previous documentary you've worked on. So how did that come about, and how did you get involved in that? So Lamasoft is the Jeff Minter is actually a compilation of different games, and there's documentaries on that on that game compilation, right?
So, I mean, Digital Eclipse have this approach. It's called like the Gold Master series, right? And they've done one before, Karateka. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right, but it was basically like that, making of that classic 8-bit karate game. And it's so what they do is they do a retrospective. They have lots of playable stuff, as well as like the your more traditional passive watching information on a screen kind of thing. So like documentary, talking head kind of stuff. So they'd done one of those before, and they were doing the second one about Jeff. And they, Tom Russo, who was like the head of one of the heads of Digital Eclipse, was talking to the community, Jeff Minter's community, asking if there was any footage that they could use, any documentary type stuff that was already in existence that they could maybe leverage for their thing, because it's very, very low budget productions that they put together. They work very efficiently. So, but a mutual friend, Gareth Noyce, who's in the film, said you should talk to Paul Docherty. He's been working on a film for a couple of years now, and he might be able to help you. So I got talking to Tom, and through Tom talked to like their documentary staff. Chris Calder's like the head of like that part of their production. Very, very smart guy. And together we went through all this stuff that I had, all the entire the breadth of material that I had that covered Jeff's life, and they went through it and said, all right, we could talk about this and this and this and this, and we signed a deal. So they licensed my footage, and I edited 12 featurettes for the Digital Eclipse release. So and they covered different parts, different aspects of Jeff's 8-bit and 16-bit career. And then the 13th featurette is an ad for the film, basically. So so it was, and to a large extent, a co-production. I don't think they call it that though. It's a Digital Eclipse production, and I helped. But Hart just mentioned it at the front. It was, and it was great for me. It's really great for me because like I'm making a film that's essentially for like an audience that isn't gamers, right? Like I wanted to try and make. So guy was, and this is, you're going to ask me this question later, but I'm going to get into it now. I started making this film because I wanted to talk about the way the games used to be made back in the 80s and early 90s for an audience who's used to like AAA games now, right? It was very, very different. And it's like the indie dev scene that I didn't know existed when I started making the film. So, and through long conversations in the wee small hours with old friends, it came up, you should do a film about Jeff. However, skip ahead. I'm making this film, and as I'm showing it to non-gamers, the details, right, the minutia of like the making the actual stuff. So it was sort of getting cut out, falling by the wayside. That people don't need to know that Jeff had a beef with Zap magazine, right? And they don't need to know that. But that's exactly the kind of stuff that Chris Kohler was looking for. So that found a home in the Digital Eclipse production, and so it sort of makes Heart of Neon an hour and a half longer. Because it's a prequel of sorts, right? Or Heart of Neon is a spiritual sequel to what Digital Eclipse did. It's a different kind of thing. It's obviously much more traditional film. The thing that Digital Eclipse is really good at was creating this platform neutral way of playing these old games. And I hope they keep doing it. They've done the Atari 50 one, obviously, and Karateka. And they've just Tetris came out last year, and there's more in the pipeline. I think it's a really great idea, and like one of the things I'm passionate about, I'm still trying to find a way to help is game preservation, right? And it's this thing's becoming increasingly difficult, but with these server-based games and corporations not really caring.
Especially things like a lot of the online stores get closed and things like that as well. That's something we've had to talk about quite a bit on some of our shows where. It seems that they're just one at a time. These different online stores are just closing down, which is why we always come back to. It used to be that if you wanted to buy a game, you'd buy a game and then you would own it, and then you put it in your machine and you play it, and that was it. And now it's like you don't own your games; you kind of own the license to play them on a digital platform, and that can be taken away. And even now, like the Nintendo Switch 2 coming out, we were talking about this last night, is that they're trying to make the user agreement that you don't own your Switch 2. You own a license to play it. So that future-proofs them, saying, right, if you do anything with the Switch 2 that we don't like if you modify it, we can brick it.
Yeah, USA only, that is, by the way. Apparently.
Yeah. Oh, is it?
Really?
Yeah. Can't do it over here.
it's so different now. But I just always used to love going and like buying a game and picking up. I'll steal a line from Ollie. He's not with us tonight because he always says this. The experience of a game starts when you first pick it up and you have the box in your hand. Yeah. So once you've bought that game and you're on your way home and you're maybe checking out the manual, looking at the bits, we don't really get the manuals and stuff that much anymore, and things like that. So it's like I say, there's a huge leap in things like graphic capability and the amount of people that now work on a single title, and the stuff that comes out from AAA games is, very, very impressive. And it's great that we have all that. But those solo run dev teams, retro inspired games, the indie scene, like all that stuff as well, still has, produces some really great content. And I think, we're all here for that as well.
Well, that's why we've got the Evercade, isn't it, at the minute? So
yes, yeah,
we have a lot of stuff on Evercade because obviously it's cartridge based. Do you know what I mean? It's cartridge based games. Like it's all old school games. This one's an Indie Heroes one. They've even brought out like a little VS which connects to your TV. They've got handhelds, and then they're getting hold of like licenses. Data East. Do you know what I mean? Neo Geo's their latest one. So they're trying to preserve the old school games. So it's something that we definitely need to do.
So we sort of dipped into it a bit there, and we can sort of come back round as you need to. But what then was the start of doing Heart of Neon? So you're already aware you're doing Heart of Neon, you worked on the Lamasoft then, if that was like previewed in that. So how did that actually come about in that timeline? When did you start working on Heart of Neon?
That's a good question. So I was casting about. I'd become a filmmaker. I'd stumbled out of the video games business in the late 90s and became a film student. I was looking for something creative to do, and the local university had a program that was well regarded. Got into that, and then sort of from there, became an intern at a documentary production company run by Ken Burns. He's a noted filmmaker in the US. Well, no, people. My dad had seen his baseball documentary series on TV, so my dad knew about him. Anyway, so I became a documentary filmmaker through that sort of accident, because I always thought it was going to be the next Scorsese, but it didn't happen. So as I gained experience in the field, I was always going to make my own film, but what was it going to be about, right? Because it takes years, so you're investing all this time. So I was casting about for a story to do with video games because I had that connection, personal connection. And I was thinking about, at one point I was considering doing a documentary about id Software and Doom before everybody else has obviously done it since then. I was talking to a friend of mine who was a producer, and he said, "Oh, I've just shown my young son, Doom," and he said, "Wow, these graphics suck." And I was like, that sort of like made me pause. Like, right, so this thing about the past isn't necessarily going to grab everybody. So maybe I shouldn't focus on like that technology, because not everybody's going to be interested in that part, even though I was. So it was talking to Gary Liddon, who's a mutual friend, Gary Liddon. I used to be in a software company with Gary way back. And Gary now runs Rockstar Dundee. He was saying, you should make a game about a film about Jeff, and he's pointed out Jeff's career more or less spans the entire history of home video game playing. I mean, the Odyssey was before Jeff, but it's in the ballpark. From this perspective, it seems like it's the whole history. And I sort of declined at the time because I still live in Brooklyn, New York, and Jeff lives in Southern Wales, and it just didn't seem likely. But as I thought about it and my connection to Jeff's work, and thought about what Jeff's career sort of could represent on screen, because you've got the really early 8-bit games, which are kind of chunky, and then like this really super 4K high-res stuff that he does now, you can see a progression. You can actually look at his work like an artist. I want to portray the story of a game developer in the same way you talk about writers or performers or painters, right? And for an audience that doesn't play games, you can really see technology evolving as well as Jeff's games evolving. And it was so visually, it was a sort of a gift, because not many people's stories could reflect that. So So that was the hook for me. I tell the story of Jeff Minter as a sort of like an indie artist, an outsider artist, right? This guy who has a bunch of sheep and lives on a freehold in the middle of Wales, and yet makes these games that like he just won an award for best VR game in Edge magazine when I was at the beginning of me making the film. So
wow,
it felt right, you know, it felt good. And there's something about Jeff's story that's sort of timeless, which sort of works for me because it took me so long to finish the film. Because he's in the time it's maybe to make one film, he's made 5 games. So you know,
wow, yeah,
he's very productive.
Yeah, mad. Yeah. So, what was the process like of doing that? So, once you sort of had the green light to go ahead and do this, how did you actually get started on and actually, well, just documentary filmmaking in general? Like, what is the process like to actually go from a concept to making a film?
Well, I mean, there's different ways of doing it, but the way I've come up doing it, I'm an editor by trade, have been an editor. So I'm the one who's given a bunch of material, and most documentaries are done. So you shoot a lot of footage, and then you edit the footage to see where the best bits are, and depending on the quality of these bits, that ends up dictating what the story is, right? If you go in there trying to shoot a film about the way doctors do surgery or something, but you never actually get a camera into the operating room, you're not going to tell that story, right? So I had a vague plan. Based on that strategy, I had a vague plan. I'm going to tell a story that tells like the highlights of the way home to video games developed as a business, and tell Jeff's story in parallel with that, and sort of like weave it together like that. So it was going to be more historical. That was my strategy going in, and that would informed all the interviews, you know. What do I ask Jeff? So that was, I didn't want it to be like a game by game thing. That's been done. People know that. You can Google that. I want to tell something more about, I don't know, motives and what were the things that Jeff was struggling against, and you know, because the question I was asking was like, how can a guy as left field as Jeff survive 40 years in an industry that doesn't really care for, you know, eccentricity, you know. So, and it turns out it was he has a great relationship with his fans, and that's so there's this thing emerged out of these interviews that I'd made that I'd sort of heard about before, but it didn't connect until I was interviewing these people face to face.
And one thing we found, that we've spoken to quite a few sort of devs from, you know, some indie devs and some sort of devs from some older games, and there has been a bit of a common theme that although there's a lot of people that are really passionate about making games, when they've worked for big studios, there's a huge amount of pressure to meet deadlines, and some of the working conditions they face are, you know, really tough in a lot of ways. And it's, you know, it's weird to hear these stories about people working on stuff that loads of people aspire to do, but then having to face like really tough deadlines and really tough working conditions. But again, a lot of people persevere with that and come up with some amazing titles, and then, you know, to actually, you know, break out and become really successful. So,
I mean, it's not like Jeff doesn't have tight deadlines too. Even though he's still a dev. It's that he doesn't go into a development cycle already like some game development cycles or TV production cycles. You're already sprinting when you start. Right? It's like producers don't trust you're going to get it done on time, so everybody's already working 12-hour days, and it's madness. You know, you can't start that. You can't sustain that for 2 years. So I don't know. It was like, so Jeff's peers in the early 90s were even Tony Crowther, right? He was like the other like notable like solo dev back in the 80s. You know, I loved his Griffin and, you know, that kind of Blagger, son of Blagger. He became a team leader by 94, 95, and Jeff never did, you know, and that was the opposite of what everybody else was doing, is what Jeff chose to do. So I mean, that's sort of what the film's about, really. How do you do the opposite and still keep a roof over your head?
Yeah, and I can't. What was the you might have to remind me, Blanners, what the time frame was? And when we spoke to the Oliver twins, they said they would bring out a game in how many months was it?
I think it was one. They were doing like one a month at least in their bedroom. Yeah, at the beginning.
And then a game they had this ambition that the game would only take them a month. They'd spend 1 month doing a game and then move on to something else, which is just madness. How long games take to make. Shall we have a quick look at the trailer? Right, if I bring up trailer for the documentary.
Sure.
Actually, Blunners, can you bring it up? Because I'm on Firefox and it doesn't give me the sound.
Okay.
If you do it your side, go and do a quick search for trailer. Sorry to put you on the spot. I just remembered my browser doesn't give me audio, so it would be wouldn't be the best.
Okay. Also, while you're doing that one, you try and find, is it on Kickstarter? How can we get our viewers to get on this?
Yeah, shall I bring up while you're looking for that? Shall I bring up the Kickstarter and share that on screen as well? So let's do that from my screen for the time being. If I present, there we go. Right. So here's the Kickstarter launching soon. Here you go. Here's the
400 followers already. Yay!
Nice. Very good. Then there you go. That's some of the games there. And yeah, 400. So where are you? Where does it show the? If you go on here,
this is launching soon as well. So it's launching soon.
Yeah, there's a thing of the goal, isn't it? Where's the?
What are you looking
funding
for?
Goal. How far towards the funding goal you are.
So once it goes live,
it launches tomorrow. So launches Thursday. So we haven't. Yeah, Thursday. So
right. Okay.
So yeah, I've put a link in the chat for that as well. We'll put a link on the video description for you. Yeah. But yeah, I do have the.
If I stop the screen, you can give us a preview of the trailers then, Blaze.
Okay.
So I'm a bit of a noob when it comes to Kickstarter. I look at it now and then, but I don't really know how to navigate it.
Fair enough.
Right, there we go.
Jeff Minter is an indie video game legend. He's been around the industry for many years.
Jeff, as an example of a self-made man.
It is very interesting to see someone who's never really fallen into the trap of wanting to conform to what the industry thinks anyone should be.
Everyone else was just a company or product, and Jeff was Jeff.
He did what he wanted to do for 4 decades on his terms, and that's unprecedented.
He's got this vision of what he wants to make, and he's been dogged chasing this forever.
I mean, Minter makes games out of love.
They harken back to the earlier 1980s arcade games, which was experimental game mechanics, very fast and very skills-based. And we've lost touch with that.
He just makes games at his core. That's what he does, making money out of games. It's a very different skill.
You hear about the high-profile people who are doing video games, making loads of money, but for 99.9% of the people who are doing it don't make any money at all.
The business side of things, yeah, it's crippling.
And then on top of that, completely out of the blue, comes his cease and desist.
I was even wondering whether I'd even do games ever again, because it was just so damn depressing.
For him to continue for so many years is not just a testament to his durability. You have to be obsessed with the art of it.
I didn't want to give it up.
I think for anybody today, looking at what Jeff had done, the inspiration comes from the fact that he, come hell or high water, found a way to make his vision come out of his head, goes through the keyboard onto the screen.
At times when I've been a bit fed up with the games industry, I've been lucky to have another thread of my career, something that was deep in my heart when I was 11 years old.
He made an awesome set of technology that you could play as an instrument.
And it was just an absolute game changer.
I don't think anyone before that time had anything near it.
We wanted to smuggle this performance thing into like the hands of everyone in the world.
That was the plan.
It's the thing the world needs right now.
Get on it. Yeah, like job's not done.
It's just become one of the big stories of his career. But he has to find an audience.
Can he do that?
It didn't.
There we go. No, it looks excellent. Yeah. So, what's the next steps then with Guinness? You've got your Kickstarter, so that goes live on Thursday. And what's the sort of timeline you're looking at now?
So it's a 30-day fundraising campaign to finance the Blu-ray physical release, and people can acquire like the access to the digital version as well, or instead during the campaign. But it's just this whole thing, like you're saying about physical media. I want there to be a version that people can have access to, whether it goes on Amazon or get taken off of Amazon or wherever it ends up, Tubi or whatever. You know, I just want it to be the people who want a copy right now, for it to be something they can hold, right? And that's so whatever happens beyond that is going to be a virtual experience, and it'll bounce around different places. I also want to take it on tour. Part of the campaign, what I want to do is to bring new audiences in, even though Jeff is possibly an unlikely ambassador for the games industry. I think there's something there that is when I was testing the film in the States, you know, a country that doesn't really know who Jeff is or what British gaming is, he tests really well. He's a very nice guy. The women really like him. So there's an opportunity here maybe to broaden the reach of arcade style gaming to audiences who were maybe curious. So I want to do hands-on screenings. I show the film and have like Jeff's games available and Jeff's light synth or some version of it, because it features a little bit in iRobot. There's the ungame segment where you just get to play with the light show in the background. That's a version of Jeff's light synth, the VLM, or what it comes under a lot of different names. And the film goes into a lot of detail about how VLM has been like his passion project almost since the beginning. So I want to do stuff like that, go to trade shows and set up screenings with museums and stuff. And you know, that's sort of where I see the film going. And then maybe I would like at some point to find a home for the film on terrestrial TV. It would be great. I don't know if it's likely. It's probably going to end up on Tubi, probably. But so that's the idea. So that was a fairly inarticulate answer, but I think that answers your question.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So roughly how many games did Jeff actually work on then? If he's been doing it for that long, he's made all these games.
Well, it depends how you count them, right? Because he counts the SKUs. So he does all. There was a point in his career where other people did conversions for him, and then he just stopped that thing. So he's done, as far as I know, 123 games, but that includes like 5 different versions of iRobot, right? Or 5 different versions of Tempest 4000. It's when I stopped counting it 103, and then he just kept doing it. So so it's in that vicinity. It's somewhere. It's approaching 130 different platform games. His games playing on different platforms. So I don't know. It's a lot.
Yeah,
it's a lot. He takes about. I mean, you talk about development cycles. He takes currently about a year, 12 months to 18 months to get a game.
That seems so much more reasonable to me when it was like, oh yeah, we'll make a game of the month. They're like, yeah, sounds about right. Yeah,
well, I mean, during his Commodore 64 days, he was doing five games a year. So I mean, it was just a different platform. I mean, you know, there was less space to work in, right? So he would his games cycle was much shorter. But he's doing well at 18 months on a because he's doing, when he's writing one game, he's writing it to his virtual machine. It's this thing they call the Neon Engine, so that it will run on the Xbox and the PlayStation and the Nintendo. And so there's a certain amount of, if it wasn't for his partner Giles, who handles the systems part of it, Jeff wouldn't be able to get as many SKUs out as he does. So there is that too. But they're definitely very much a team, and one doesn't work well without the other.
Yeah. And just picking up a few bits from the trailer there, they're talking about like how the sort of the business side of the industry is very different than actually making games, and he's considered sort of, you know, out of left field. What is it about Jeff then that is sort of considered more left field or unconventional about how people in the industry tend to be, that sort of drawn him in as a focus point for a documentary?
Oh wait, I'm not entirely sure. So what are you asking me? What is it that? What is it? The difference that draws me to?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's It's a good question. I don't think I have a great answer. The thing is, like, I was drawn to him because I, one, had played his games, and two, I had access to him. And in documentary film, it's all about access. If I can't get to interview the guy, then what's the point of making a film about him? So there was that.
Yeah.
And what I discovered, he was perfect for what I wanted. I didn't know when I started. I was like, oh, this guy, he's been around for a while. That might be interesting. It turned out he's this guy who was always swimming against the current. I'm always, and he likes it. In fact, he might even thrive on it. But he values success differently than almost everybody else in the industry, right? I mean, he's not he's not part of any committees. He's not sought after for his financial or business acumen, right? He just does this guy. He just likes doing what he likes doing. He's exactly like an artisan, right? He may as well be like throwing pots. It's the same kind of personal skill. He likes doing this, and he just happens to have an audience, and it just happens to be something that sells internationally. Wade Rosen happens to be a fan, and so Atari happens to be interested in selling his stuff, but it could easily just not be. I mean, that's the sort of like the balancing act that Jeff's done for over 40 years. It's like he could easily have just fallen into, just disappeared. It could have happened, and there was no safety net, not really. So I mean, he's got a pension. You know, he didn't have a backup plan. He wasn't going to do anything. Oh, I'm going to be a movie star instead. You know, it wasn't anything like that. So it's sort of, you know, that it's like, you know, one of my favorite authors is Alan Moore, right? And most people, especially in Britain, have heard of Alan Moore. So there was that point when he was writing, and he was like, you know, sort of freelancer, and then his wife had their first child, and he went, right, now I've got to make this pay. Like, it's like Jeff's always sort of had that fire behind him, you know. I mean, for different reasons. He doesn't have any kids, but it's the same kind of thing. Like, if I want to keep doing what I want to do, I have to make this work, and that's sort of rare that you see somebody that is such an obvious example. And he never exploited, he never brought on cheap easy young guys, right, who would be cheaper to work, and then have them do like the bulk of it, and he would just like be a supervisor. He could have done that. He had lots of people who would love to do that. So it's interesting. He's the opposite of like the capitalist ideal, right? And that sort of rubs people the wrong way. I've had a lot of people looking at me like I'm mad. Why tell this guy's story? And it's precisely because people think it's mad. It's like, well, what if this was normal, right? What if like companies didn't shutter, they like close up shop and leave people without health insurance? What if people were just, you know, sort of self-sufficient, and that would be great? I don't know. It's fun to think about.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned Alan Moore. I always find it funny whenever I see clips of him being spoken to about movies that have been made from his books. And he doesn't like them. He's like, oh, some things shouldn't be movies; they should be books. So obviously, he signed off getting that, and you know, maybe he needed the money to do it. And then you see these interviews, and think, oh, I love that film, and this is the guy that wrote the book that it's based on, and he hates the film. I was like,
he gives his money away for these things. I mean, he's a bit, I don't know. He's right though. I mean, Alan Moore's like one of those literary guys. I mean, his books are super booky. You know, they make thousands of references to other books and other comic books. So when he translate that to film, I don't know. I like the Watchmen movie.
I love the funny thing is, I actually watched, I think they announced the Watchmen film the day that I finished reading the book. Well, the book's been out for years, and then someone just lent it to me and said, oh, you know, I think you'll like this, and I finished reading it, and then literally the next day I saw an article saying, oh, it's been made into a movie. So I was like, oh, that's good. Good timing. That's another one where I know people say this a lot, but the book is better than the film. I think that's very true to a lot of things. You know, a lot of films are based on books, but it is a very different medium, isn't it? You can't quite tell the story in the same way. I think, you know, a good movie based on a book or any other medium is good by how they adapt it. And if they change enough stuff and they adapt it to make it work as a film, that it's a good film on its own. I think sometimes it falls over if they try and just make it like for like, but on screen, and it's like, well, actually the pacing works better in a book, you know, and things like that. Sometimes that falls over.
Oh yeah, they're just well, I mean, you know, the translation from video game to film, I mean, sometimes it works. Like Last of Us is really popular.
Yeah, it's very good at the minute.
Yeah, and that's something we talk about quite a lot, actually. It's like I like the conversion both ways, like films tend into games or games tend into films. and there's so many that just aren't very good, and it's a shame because actually, like, some of the stories we get in games are really, really good, and when you try and put it on film, for some reason there's just a lot of, like, people haven't quite got it right. But we're getting to a point now where we are getting things like Last of Us, we're getting things like Fallout, and it's like, here you go, you can make really good content with these stories. So yeah, it's always good to see.
Fallout was very smart because it doesn't try to do one of the stories from the game. It's sort of like it exists in the same world, and it's sort of like between a couple of different game scenarios. And it's very, very smart. I think that was like that's Christopher Nolan's brother, right? It's Jonathan Nolan. I think he's very smart. It's very well done.
One thing I was going to mention: who's done your the art as well? That's on here. I just want to show it if I can link it in. So he done the box art and everything for your Blu-ray.
Well, that would be me. That's me.
Phenomenal.
Well,
that's so good. It looks great. I was just wondering who it was because I think you've done a really good job there. But yeah, so Thursday we're looking at this goes.
Yeah, it's around 7 a.m. UK time on Thursday. I have to turn it on myself. I have to start it manually, so it might not be on the button on the money in terms of like on the stroke of the hour, but it'll be about then. And I'll put it up on the socials when it's live. But if you sign up on the webpage, if you click on the notify me button, it'll tell you. Kickstarter will tell you when it goes live, so you won't need me to tell you.
Yeah, and we can give you a little plug as well on our socials when we see that go live.
Thank you.
Which would be great. Cool. Right. I think I had one other question I was going to ask before we move on to the next bit, which was so having played a lot of his games in the process of this, what would you say is your favourite game he's produced? Do you have a top game? Maybe even like a top. He's done over 100, so maybe like top 5 or something. If you need to.
Well, I mean, I certainly. There was a point where I was during post production. I was doing Twitch a lot. I was like doing it. It was trying to be every day. It wasn't end up. It'd be most days, right? And the calendar was fairly arbitrary, except for Wednesdays I played Jeff's Iridice Alpha on the Commodore 64, and on Sundays I would play Tempest 2000 on the Jaguar. And so those two, because I could play them anytime. Iridice Alpha is he released that game on the Commodore 64 through Houston. It was very slick. It was probably one of the most polished games he did at the time. It's still one of the most polished 8-bit games I've ever seen, considering it's original, and it's just so fast and so difficult. And there's a point where, like, once you get the hang of it and you get in the zone, you just run with it, and it's great. And I have to play with. I played it so often. I got the old calluses back on my hands from using the old Kempston joysticks.
Yeah.
So in terms of like games I return to over and over and over again, I could pick up Iridice Alpha right now and be happy for a couple of hours, easy. It's just that one. And Tempest 2000. I was late to that. I played that in a fairly crappy emulator for a while. And then I got good at one of Jeff's cohorts who was interviewed for the film. We were talking about the past. I said, and I could play Tempest 2000, but I'm not as good as you are. And I went, oh, one of Jeff's close friends says that I'm really good at Tempest 2000. So that was a big ego boost for me. There was I was at Portland Retro Gaming Expo last September, and I was waiting. I had to present a thing about Heart of Neon. And I found a Jaguar just there. Or I had half an hour to kill, so I was playing Tempest 2000. And I had somebody walking up behind me, and I tend to I'm not great in front of people. I tend to choke a little bit, but I was doing really well. And I just lost a life and turned to say, "Oh, sorry," to the guy standing behind me, and it was Jeff. Jeff standing behind me, and he went, "Oh yeah, you're doing all right. Well done." So that was good too. So those are the two games that I return to over and over again. Definitely.
Okay. Cool. Okay. No, brilliant. We've got a bit of time. So one of the sections we have on the show is the Desert Island Games Room, which talks about a bit before the show. So we have a little intro for that. So I'm going to get it started. There we go. So the Desert Island Games Room, it is if you're trapped on a desert island and you can only have one game to keep you occupied while you're waiting to be rescued, what is the one game you would want to have with you?
I'm about to call myself a liar because it's not going to be the last two that I mentioned. It would be, in terms of like a one game, one console kind of experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Jeff's TXK on this PlayStation Vita.
Was that sorry? It's Def's TSK.
TXK. It's no longer on the market. It's one of those digital stores. PlayStation's digital store came down, and that was the only place you could get it because it was a Atari cease and desist. It's in the film. It's still in the film. Anyway, but TSK is one of the versions of Tempest that Jeff did. Spiritual sequels. That's just, I mean, it reappeared as Tempest 4000 on a bunch of platforms, and it's not the same. It's not the same. There's something. It's slightly lower resolution, so it's less sharp to look at. It's smoother. The color scheme is different. The music's different. The place is the controls and the OLED screen are just, the OLED screen is perfect. And my Vita still works, but the battery doesn't hold charge, so it's not as much fun as it used to be. But honestly, it's just perfect. It's an arcade in your hands. It's just great. So, I mean, I would be very happy just to while away the hours playing that, as long as I had someone to charge it. That would be fine.
Oh, we won't take any of the things into account for the Desert Island.
That's your first Vita game, though, isn't it, Tim?
It is, yeah. I got the first two. I'm just trying to see if I can bring up a little video of it to see.
Yeah, because I really want to see.
Yeah,
what it's like.
Here we go.
Well, it looks a lot like Tempest.
Yeah,
it's like that. More neon.
Do we get the OLED version?
We just skip this and see.
Man, I bought the PlayStation TV little device, so I could play it on like the big screen.
Yeah,
I'm just gonna
that
find
didn't
this,
last. I did it. That
no,
I just found a clip of it, but it is someone pointing a camera at their TV. So let's find a better version of that gameplay.
So, what games did you have on there too? What other games have you had in this?
I shall tell you so far. So we have had Sonic 3 on the Mega Drive, Outrun Coast to Coast on the Xbox, Sonic Adventure 2 on the GameCube, Stardew Valley on the Switch, Shadow of the Colossus on the PS2, Breath of the Wild on the Switch, Sonic 2 on the Mega Drive, and Satisfactory on Steam. And now TXK on the Vita.
No Mario in there. A lot of Sonic.
No Mario. Quite a few Sonic games. Quite Sonic heavy.
Yeah,
right?
I never got into Sonic at the time. I think I missed out because like so many people I know love Sonic.
I do like old school Sonic. Do you know what I mean? Like a lot of the 3D Sonic stuff, and didn't really translate very well with the fast movement and things like that. But 2D Sonic, I'm all for. And Sonic Mania, when that came out, I was like, that as a return to form of decent Sonic games. But yeah, I am surprised we've not had any Mario. But yeah, this is the latest addition to the room.
Oh wow!
Yeah, you can see the old school sort of vibe of it. But that look at these explosions.
But the thing that Jeff always did was he wrote his games for the hardware, right? So he made sure it played. It was so responsive on the Vita, and the design of the device itself was really ergonomic. It was very satisfying. It's very pleasing. I don't know. It's one of my favorites.
Looks fantastic. Do you say is this VR as well?
There was going to be a VR version, but after the Atari issue, they got cancelled.
Because this would be phenomenal, wouldn't it, Tim?
Yeah, I was thinking that as well. As soon as I saw it, it's like, this would look good in VR. Just looking down that trench and shooting. Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Right. Let me just come off of there. And just to see if there's anyone in the chat who would like to ask any questions. Don't know if you've got any other questions yourself, Blanners, that we haven't covered. I think you did we have a starred comment?
No, it was just basically asking. It was a question that was asking where can they back the project, and we've already kind of covered that as well.
Excellent. Cool. Good stuff. So we've shared the link for the actual Kickstarter. Is there anything else that you've got that you want to plug while you're with us, or anywhere where we can follow you? Where sort of
I mean, heartofneon.com is always a good place to keep in touch. If you sign up for there's a link on the Heart of Neon website for the newsletter. That's where you get the latest updates in terms of like public screenings and future opportunities to buy merchandise. If you're interested, we just sold some stuff at the Zap Live event that was really successful. But yeah, in terms of
where are some of your public screenings likely to be? Where what sort of locations have you got to
I don't have names in front of me right now, but there are a number of like local video game and retro computer museums in and around England. Towns around England. So like yeah, I don't have that, but it's like the Strong Museum just outside of New York City is another one of the places where I would do it. So like it would be at places where people can congregate to play old games with hands-on kind of experience. That's the kind of place that I'll gravitate to, and I want to partner with these locations to create events that will bring in people from the neighborhood and get to, I don't know, really get a sense of it. It's one thing to show a film about, you know, a thing like VR or what Jeff does with the light synth, but you really have to put your hands on it and try it yourself, and that's what I want to do. So, you know, it's like I said, if you sign up for the newsletter on the Heart of Neon webpage, more details about that kind of thing will be forthcoming. I've been focused on the Kickstarter. I can only do one thing at a time. It's just me.
It's mad how much is involved in doing it all. It's that's the one thing I really like about things like Kickstarter and just like the indie gaming scene or like indie comic book scene and things like that. It's just giving people that platform to produce things themselves and get stuff made. And yeah, some of the content that then comes out is really impressive. It's man, you know, some of the games we look at, sometimes we've talked to some people that are producing really good indie games. Like, oh, how many people on the team? Like, oh, there's 5 of us. Like, I've played a game at an indie game show, which is a VR game. We had the guys on here, and it was like, there's a really impressive game. So, no, how many people are on this, and how long have we been working on it for? And there's 5 of us, and we were doing it for a year. And I was like, 5 people have made something of this quality in 1 year. That's absolutely mad. So, we've got a question from Mr. David Newland Music. Sorry, there you go. So, I'll fire my usual question across. How do you go about looking for composers to score your projects?
It's a really good question. I had a composer. Let me back up. As an editor, I've worked on other projects by other directors, and they all have different strategies for finding music. Some people use stock music. Some people have a composer that shows up at the end and just and they have like maybe 2 weeks to do a score, which is madness. But that's very typical. I worked this project about Mexican American civil rights, and what they did is they had a composer on at the beginning, and we were using old tracks by this composer, and I would edit scenes to it, and then the composer would take those edits and then recompose new stuff. And that's what I was doing with this composer, a Brooklyn composer that I knew and I was a huge fan of, and they dropped out. And I was scrambling. It was like my entire production cycle was based around this artist being available. So a fan of Jeff's, who was also a composer, Tony Longworth, reached out to me. He'd been reaching out to me throughout, actually, but I already had a composer, and he reached out to me after when I was like just sort of pulling my hair out, and he said, "Look, I've got this library of stuff. I want you to listen to it, and maybe you can use some of that." And it ended up, he not only did I use some of his music, but he let me remix it. So it's I heavily remixed it. Not every composer is happy with that, but he was a very good collaborator. So some of the stuff is remixed versions of older songs, some of it's new compositions, and it's generally a collaboration throughout the film. And I wanted it to be that. I don't want to be the guy who just like, just here, show up, monkey, do the music that sounds like this other thing I had. I wanted him to have his personality in it too. And it's been really, really satisfying collaboration. He did the music that was in the Digital Eclipse thing too. It was just us. We basically took scenes that we'd already cut, and I just polished them up and made them shorter and gave them to Digital Eclipse. That was basically what I did. And it had his music in it. So he has a CD. There's a digital album available on his Bandcamp page. You can hear what he does. And it's without giving him too much credit, it wouldn't be the same film without his music, because it's like that thing when you're working with the composer during the edit, the personality of the music sort of affects the way you edit the story. So I think it's fair to say that there's a lot of Tony and his personality in the film just by the benefit of him being involved this entire time. So thanks, Tony, if you're watching this.
Amazing.
I hope that answered your question, David.
Cool. Thanks very much.
Yeah,
Well,
great question.
yeah, no, thanks very much for your time this evening.
Thank you.
And yeah, all the best with this Kickstarter. It certainly looks like it's going in the right direction, and it's just amazing how you're doing like the actual events around it as well. People getting hands on with stuff. I was quite interested as well in the format of the Llama Soft, actually having documentaries within the interactive and being able to actually play in the games and things like that as well. Just interesting how these sorts of things come together. So no, it's been a really great chat hearing about all of that. Yeah, so go and follow the Kickstarter. We've got the link there, and get notified this Thursday. So yeah, jump on that this Thursday, guys. Thanks very much. Right, that's I think us for the evening. So please give us a like to let us know if you've been here, because that helps us out a lot. And if you have sort of found us through the internet algorithm of YouTube or however you've stumbled across us, please do consider hitting subscribe, because that helps us out a lot as well. And we should hopefully be doing some more bonus streams. We've got 2 streams next week. So next week we've got on Monday, Total Evercade podcast.
Yeah, the birthday
Monday.
special. It's been out 5 years.
Yeah, 5 years since the Evercade came out. So Evercade birthday special. And then we have episode 1 of the Total Steam Deck podcast next Tuesday at 9. So you're going to have another Tuesday at 9 stream. So hopefully we'll see you there. Right, that's all from me. Anything from you, Blanners?
No, that's all for me. Thank you for joining us, Paul.
Thanks, gents.
Thanks very much, Paul. Right, thanks everybody.
So bye.